Hello, my name is Christopher Day, and this is the year 2006. 2006 has a lot to offer, with movies like Ice Age The Meltdown, or songs by Shakira, Hips Don't Lie, or the famous clip of Zidane heading a player during the World Cup final. But most importantly, I'm here to discuss the major events in 2006 that make it what it is today. The first major event is the death and verdict of Al-Qaeda leader Saddam Hussein. This event relieved many lives in the east and west sides of the world.
Saddam Hussein execution. I remember, obviously, I was very happy that Saddam Hussein was removed from power, because for most of my life, he had been sort of like, for America, the number one public enemy, I guess. Because of the invasion of Kuwait and in the 90s, and then his refusal to allow UN inspectors in. I think that we went after him perhaps wrongly, because we did try to tie it to 9/11 when he really wasn't involved in 9/11, but I was happy that he had been captured.
As news of Saddam Hussein's execution spreads across the globe, reactions within Iraq are mixed. Many Iraqis watched the execution on television. Afterwards, some celebrated in the streets. In the Baghdad slum of Sadr City, some paraded an effigy of Saddam hanging from the front of a truck. But much of how Iraqis feel about the execution depends on their tribal loyalties and whether they're Shia or Sunni.
Well, fast forward to 2006, being a lot older and being, an adult at that point, I remember the news media, it was breaking news, it was on for days that Saddam Hussein was captured by our military in a spider hole. And it was interesting to see him in that light, because I was used to seeing him in a military uniform, very in control of his regime. And to see him, just tattered and bruised and beaten, a long beard, unkept, really, kind of changed perception of the man. And then he was put on trial for war crimes that he committed against his own people. I remember seeing him in the courtroom, very different in tone than he was as, the dictator of Iraq at the time.
While we're on the topic of mass murdering lunatics, another important Al-Qaeda member was killed. He went by the name of al-Zarqawi. Big Bad Al didn't get a trial like Saddam Hussein did. Rather, after discovering his location, the US bombed his secret hideout with him inside. Let's take a look.
So I remember when al-Zarqawi was killed, and I remember it was the summer. It felt like they had finally made some success. It felt a little bit closer to maybe ending the war. At that point, it had been going on a number of years. And so when that happened and he was killed, as terrible as that sounds, it was almost celebrated that he was dead. And it just felt a little bit closer to possibly coming to a close.
On the target. At this point, they're making an assessment as to whether or not the target had. Okay, thank you. Following this strike, Iraqi security and fully engaged, and whether they need to re-engage it one more time.
I don't remember exactly where I was when I found out that Zarqawi had died, but I knew for sure that he was the leader of Al-Qaeda. And I think some coalition forces sent a missile in, and it was a joint force thing, and that's obviously a huge win for the U.S. I didn't know any specifics, but I remember that he was, responsible for thousands of people's deaths. And I remember he targeted Shiite Muslims, and there were some bombings in Jordan. He was a really bad guy.
Oh hey, I was just scrolling on Twitter, some Al Qaeda guy got bombed by the US military. What's Twitter? Twitter is a new app that lets people see, interact, and message with other people online. It really is just that easy.
What I remember about Twitter, I know that Twitter was the first of really the social media platforms. I didn't really become involved with Twitter immediately. I heard of it and didn't really understand the purpose of it. I didn't understand how far-reaching it was. Later, after 2006, I remember, certainly hearing the word tweet, which was new. We had not used that term before, and then I remember joining just to be able to read other people's posts and to see what all the hype was about.
Welcome and hello. We're here to talk about Twitter. Ow. T-W-T-T. Twitter. People do various things of various sorts and kinds, such as biking, ballooning, basketball, you name it, what have you, so forth. Twitter is important because it lets you share these memories with your friends, family, perhaps even your boss. Ooh, again with the soreness. Alrighty.
Twitter is a social texting service based on the contents of your mind. It works with your cell phone and short code 40404, and it then goes to each and every one of your many, many actionable friends, including those who like frappuccinos, and even those who have flat tires.
Text me, darling, and I never will.
So what I know about Twitter is that it was started in 2006 by Jack Dorsey when he was an NYU student. It was originally made just to send little clips and messages, but it exploded along with all the other social media apps like YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff and Snapchat. And now billions of people use it worldwide. Politicians use it, comedians and entertainers use it. Pretty much everybody uses it. And it's like the main form of communication in the world today.
Burn.
Isn't the internet cool? I mean, I can watch all my sports highlights in one place. Speaking of sports highlights, one historic baseball event that happened in 2006 was player Barry Bonds hitting his 715th home run to pass the famous Babe Ruth.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
In the late 1990s, I was a high school student, and I vividly remember being a baseball fan that two baseball players, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, were chasing each other to break the home run record of Babe Ruth. And it was literally a daily battle. I remember watching TV, listening to the radio in between classes to see if one of those players hit, the next home run. Fast forward to 2006, Barry Bonds, who is arguably one of the greatest baseball players in Major League history, was also chasing Babe Ruth's home run record, and he actually surpassed the record that was previously held, I believe, by Mark McGwire, who won that home run race.
0 for 9, 5 walks, 1 strikeout. And the Cove is waiting. The pitch. Bonds hits one high. Hits it deep to center. Out of here. 7:15. The wait is over, and they are on their feet here at AT&T Park. Bonds passes Babe Ruth. He is second on the all-time home run list.
At the time, Hank Aaron led Major League Baseball with 755 career home runs. Bonds would later continue and surpass that record with a total of 762 career home runs. In March of 2006, before he passed Babe Ruth's record, a story broke in the New York Times about Barry Bonds' scandalous steroid use. He was allegedly involved with a company that promoted wellness and fitness training, but that used supplements with traces of steroids. Bonds notably and visibly significantly increased in size and strength in the early 2000s. He became a poster child for concerns over steroid use in baseball.
Shakira. That's enough baseball for one day. On the other hand, 2006 was a time of confusion in the U.S. legislation. As April came, with one of the greatest showings of protests and rallies, known as the Immigration Rally. A rally that fought against the bill for raising penalties for illegal immigrants.
Yeah, when the immigration protests happened, I was probably in my mid-20s or so. And what I do remember is that they started in Chicago initially over a law that was that the Congress was trying to pass to really ramp up the penalties for undocumented aliens. And then I remember they just had a huge one in Dallas. Maybe it was 1 million people, maybe a little bit less, but it was really, there was a lot about it because it was very peaceful and drew a lot of media attention. And that I think that gained respect for the people that, started the protesting.
Thousands of faces, adults, children, and from different countries. Myra and Luis were among them, eager to march through the streets of Indianapolis in the fight for immigration reform with their 1-year-old son. They chanted, they waved flags, held signs, and sang. She said wedding! She said wedding! To fight for immigrant rights and be heard. Law enforcement lined the streets, but only a handful of people against the march showed up, not nearly enough to discourage a cause many fight for every day.
The immigration reform, the proposal was the result of something that was happening along years. So in the 60s, in 1960s, before the 1960s, in the United States, you could come from a different country and it was not a limited number of people that could immigrate here. After the 60s, because there were so many people coming, the government decided to have like a cap. So not everybody could immigrate. You had some conditions, and it was some kind of number per year that of people that were going to be accepted. But after the 80s, that became a huge number, with the families bringing other members. And the government got a little bit scared, so they decided to make the things harder.
Speaking of confidence in the U.S., Enron, a major gas company, took advantage of its investors' confidence within the stock market. During 2006, the Enron trial disclosed the major fraud and scandal, leading to the eventual bankruptcy of Enron and its accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, the largest in the world at that time.
And it was revealed that the Enron company was basically fudging the numbers of its stocks and manipulating its stock holdings, and that the company was actually going bankrupt, but was manipulating their investors into continuing to kind of pump money into a company that was not viable.
Mr. what would you say to the folks that used to work for your company? I'm going for it right now.
In the early 2000s, I happened to work for a publicly traded company called HealthSouth. During that same time, another publicly traded company called Enron went through a disastrous accounting scandal that ended up with its corporate officers being sentenced to prison and resulted in the fall of the largest accounting firm in the world, Arthur Andersen.
So there you have it, 2006 in all of its glory. I want to thank you for taking your time and taking this journey with me. On that note,